Hello and welcome back. This is Jennifer McGuire and I'm so thankful you're here today. Today I'm going to share with you a really fun way to create surprise slider cards. Now normally I try to do videos that focus on techniques that you can do with products on hand. However, today I am showing you a specific die set that makes slider cards easy to do. This die set is a nice one because it's not too high priced and it can be used creatively in many ways. So here are some examples of the cards I'm going to make today. See how the little graduation caps go up when you pull the tab? Here the hugs word lifts up to reveal a sentiment behind it. And then I have one last example that has a rainbow and sun that comes out from some clouds. So this is a die set that can be used with products that you have to make unique surprise slider cards. I'm hoping that by doing this video, you can decide if this product is something that you would want or figure out how to do it with products you have. So this is the Simon Says Stamp Quintuple Slider Die Set. It actually is a pretty good price point for an interactive die set. It's also easy to use and allows many images on your card to move at once. My first example is the graduation card. It features the new Simon Says Stamp Hats Off Grad stamp set and coordinating die set. I was excited to make this card because I feel really bad for the graduates this year. My second oldest daughter is graduating from college this month, and it's such a up in the air time to be graduating. So I decided to make a bunch of cards to give to her friends. I just wanted to show you the images we'll be using for our slider portion. All I did was stamp them, and then off screen I colored them with Copic markers and used the coordinating dies to cut them out. I'm really focusing on the hands that will be throwing the caps up, and then the individual caps themselves. These are really easy images to do quick coloring with. Okay, let's go ahead and do the sliding feature of this card. For this example, the caps start low, and then when you pull the tab, they lift up like they're thrown in the air. I have a piece of white cardstock that is 4 inches by 5 1/4. I'm taking the track die that's included in the slider die set, and I'm going to use some temporary tape to hold it about a 1/2 inch from the top of that panel. See, it's about a 1/2 inch up there. Then I'm going to run this through my die cut machine. This just basically cuts slits into my cardstock that will be tracks for the slider feature to slide along. I will show you ways to extend these tracks and change them up later in this video. Next, I have a piece of Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock, and from that, I will die cut the other piece from the die set. This will be the piece that hugs around the tracks and moves up and down. I did this from Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock, but you could do any color you want. The only color you'll see from this is the tab at the top. Now notice these capital I's that are kind of cut into this piece. On those, you're going to open up the little flaps. See how those are little flaps that you can open? These flaps will wrap around or hug the tracks on our white cardstock. That's what it will allow it to slide up and down freely. You can see these flaps are very easy to fold back. Okay, here's a closer look at those flaps. See how they're all folded back and ready to wrap around the tracks on our white background. Before we attach these two pieces together, I think it's helpful to have small white foam squares ready, or any color foam squares, it doesn't matter. I actually ran out of small foam squares, so I have these bigger ones that I'm cutting into smaller pieces. I've made way too many cards lately that I ran out and I'm waiting for my order to come in. Now that I have 5 of those little white foam squares ready, we can attach our flaps to the tracks on the white background. You can see how those line up. So let's start with this one on the end. I'm going to push one of the flaps through that slit on the left, and then one right next to it. And then I can just wiggle it and watch. The flaps will hug around the track on the white cardstock. Now I'm going to take one of my foam squares and put it right onto the flaps only. Make sure that your foam square does not touch the white cardstock, just those gray flaps. Now let's move on to the next one. You can see those flaps are hugging the next track, and now I can put a foam square on there. I find that by putting the foam squares on as you go, It keeps the flaps from coming undone from the track. It keeps them hugging there so they don't come undone as you do the next ones. So I'm going to continue to do this for each of the 5 tracks. I wrap the little flaps around it and then put the foam square on it. I found this was easy to do, and Lila actually did one. She actually found if she put the tip of the tweezers through the track and grabbed the flap and pulled it through, that was easier for her. But I tell you, after you've done it a couple times, it's a piece of cake. Okay, after we do that 5th track and put the foam square on there, I just like to pull the tab up and down a few times just to get it moving, and you'll see it moves freely. Now I want to make that tab, that gray piece, have more stability to it. I want it to be stronger since we're pulling it back and forth. So I'm going to double it up. What I like to do is take that same tab die and partial die cut it. So I have my Spellbinders Platinum here because it's easier to pull into the screen. Notice only the top portion of that die is under the cutting plate. That means only that area will cut. Anything else hanging out of the cutting plate won't. So we'll just have the top portion of our tab cut here. Now I'm going to take my scissors and extend it. So now I have this longer piece without the slits cut in it. You could totally skip this step if you want to, but I find that when I double up the tab thickness, it's stronger so that you can use the mechanism more without having to worry about it buckling. So I've pulled the tab out from my card panel, putting some adhesive on it, and now I'll glue this on it. So now it's doubled up there and it's strong, and you can keep doing this over and over again. Now it's time to decorate the card, and I have the hands from that graduation stamp set, and I'm just going to glue those right at the bottom of our tracks. I then have a congrats die cut that I assembled off screen. This is the Simon Says Stamp CZ Design Congrats die. I die cut the shadow from white and the word congrats 3 times from black cardstock, and I glued them together for dimension. Now it's time to add our graduation caps. So I remove the release paper from our foam tape, add the graduation caps on, and that's it. I decided to keep this very simple. You could stamp on the background if you wanted to. You can add anything you want, but I wanted to keep this simple. Now it's time to add this onto our note card. To do so, I want foam tape on the back so that that mechanism can freely go up and down. I put foam tape on the bottom and then a thin foam strip along the sides. Just make sure it's close to that gray mechanism, but not up against it. You want that mechanism to move freely. Now I'm adding that onto a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch note card made of Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock. Now on the tab, I'm stamping Pole, which is from the Lawn Fawn Push Here stamp set. You could write Pole or use little alphabet letters. I just find that Lawn Fawn stamp set to be very handy. It has lots of interactive sentiments. Okay, so here is a final look at the card. I did add some Lucy's Cards iridescent gemstones. You can add accents wherever you want. Just make sure they don't get in the way of the mechanism. So just make sure they're not in the way of the graduation caps. I did add a little bit of some aqua shimmer pen to the congrats so it has some sparkle. But there you have a fun interactive graduation card. I've done many surprise slider cards in the past, but what's special about this one is it allows several elements to move at once. You can have 5 elements moving if you wanted to. Now, I did have some extra pieces left over. If you wanted to make a graduation card without the interactive feature, you could definitely glue all the pieces onto a card. I made these quick ones for some of our neighbor kids. Now, before we move on to the next example, I wanted to share some other ideas. This one gives you 5 elements that move up and down. You could do maybe a hill of grass and have 5 little critter images jump up and down. You could have 5 balloons going up and down. The sky's the limit with this set. Okay, now next I wanted to show you how to use that same slider die, but have one large element slide up and down. So watch this. Here's the card as it is comes out of the envelope, and when you pull the tab, the hugs moves up and reveals a sentiment underneath. So this is one that you could use with any large stamp or die cut and allow that to move up and down. And it uses the same die set. For this one, I used the Simon Says Stamp Luck and Hugs stamp set. I'm crazy about this stamp set. That hug sentiment, so much fun, and all of those little sentiments are so encouraging, especially good for everything that's going on right now in our world. So I took the hug sentiment along with some of the other images in the set, and I'm stamping them with black Copic-friendly ink on white cardstock. I did a few of these, and I did some coloring off screen so that all of my pieces would be ready. Next, I created a background piece. This is just like I did before. I started with 4 by 5 1/4 inches of white cardstock, but this time I decided to stamp it first. So I stamped it with a heart background stamp from Simon Says Stamp, and I used Simon Says Stamp Fog ink to do that. I wanted it to be subtle. Now it's time to cut the tracks into this background. I'm going to change it up and do it a little bit different than I did last time, although you could leave it as is. So I ran it through the die cut machine once, but now I'm going to rotate the die and line up the tracks again, but cut it again. And this will give me 5 tracks that are all the same length. You could skip this if you wanted to, but it really allows you to kind of change how much you move and also makes the tracks all even, so it looks nice in the finished card. Once again, I cut the slider die from Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock. However, this time, I'm only going to use the flaps on the ends. So on this first column, I'm going to pull back the flaps here. Then on the last column, I'll pull back the flaps there. I'm not going to use the flaps on the middle track. That's one of the nice things about this die. You can use whichever ones you want so that there are only movement in the certain areas. Okay, so now I'm going to wrap the flaps of the first one around the first track. This is exactly like we did before. Now I could put the foam square on to hold it there like I did before, but I'm going to be bold and try to do the other one without it coming undone. So now I'm going to the last track, wrapping the flaps around that one, and there we have it. This time I only am using 2 of those sliders. That's just because I want to have a sentiment under the middle area. Okay, now I'm going to create that second piece that will give it stability. So I'm doing partial die cutting of another piece of fog cardstock. Just the top portion is being cut. I can then use my trimmer or scissors to make this longer. Again, you could skip this if you wanted to. I just like to make the slider stronger so it doesn't buckle as someone's doing it. Okay, so I'm going to pull it all the way out. I use my thumbnail to make a little tick mark of where I need to cut it. That's one of my ways to save time instead of using a pencil. And now I can glue this piece on top of our slider function. Again, this is just to hide those little slits that you see there and also to give it stability. Now, before I assemble everything on the front, I'm going to just tape it in the closed position. So I'm going to flip this over. See how the top of the gray piece is lined up with the top of the white piece? That's kind of the closed position. This is where I want it to be when I have the card closed. I'm going to put a piece of purple tape along that. This is just a temporary tape. That way I know what the closed position is as I assemble all the pieces on the front. So now I have the hugs stamped image from earlier. I cut it out so there's some solid area behind it. That way I can hide a sentiment behind it. Any large die cut or cut out stamped image would work here. I need 2 small foam squares, 1 for each of the little sliders that we have. Last time we had 5 sliders. This time I only have 2. So I put 1 on the left and 1 on the right. Now I can take my hugs image and stretch it between those 2 foam squares. So I'm going to attach it straight here. This will be the closed position, so it's kind of in the center there. And now the hugs will move up and down when you pull that slider function. By the way, I did double up the cardstock on the hugs, so I cut out 2 of them and glued them together so it'd be stronger, but I think you could get away with 1 thickness if you wanted. Okay, I'm putting it back in the closed position so that I can assemble some flowers around it. Now I'm just using a little bit of adhesive here so I can glue it down and test it out because we do not want to get in the way of the tracks of the slider function. So I'm trying to go between the slider areas. And I'm attaching some flowers above and some flowers below. But by using a light amount of adhesive that I can rub away, then I can be sure that I'm able to move them around until I'm happy with the result, until everything works fine. Then I'll go back and put a little bit of strong liquid adhesive under the die cuts so that they'll stay put when we mail it. So now that I know my flowers are all okay where they're positioned, I'm going to flip it over and we're going to put foam tape around our slider mechanism. Make sure it's in the closed position where that gray lines up with the white on the top. I put foam tape along the bottom, and then I put foam tape along the sides. Don't go too close because you want that gray piece to be able to slide up and down freely. So you can see there's a tiny bit of space there. I will say I find it helpful to temporarily tape the slider piece in position so that when you're doing this, it doesn't wiggle around and get stuck to the foam tape. So that's why I put that purple tape at the top. Once I have adhesive on the back or foam tape on the back, I can put this onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card and remove that purple tape. And now you can see how the hugs word goes up and down very freely. And I like how all the slits are the same length, so it almost looks part of the design. After I went and put some liquid adhesive under each of my flowers so they would permanently stick, and also added some leaves, it's time to add a sentiment behind the hugs word. I stamped a sentiment from the Hugs and Luck stamp set onto a white piece of scrap cardstock, and I'm putting adhesive on the back and putting it right underneath the hugs word. It's okay that I am gluing on top of those middle tracks because we don't have anything sliding on that. Just as long as you don't cover the first and last track, you're okay. After doing this, I used my aqua shimmer pen to add a little bit of sparkle to the word hugs. I also added some yellow pearls from Lucy's cards to the center of the flowers and on the background in different places. I just made sure I didn't interfere with the mechanism. So this example shows that you can use just some of the tracks so that you have a large element move across. You can also do this sideways on a card. You could even do partial die cutting so it only cuts the 2 tracks you need, and then you don't have the other tracks in the middle. There are many ways you can use this die set, and this happens to be my favorite. I like the large element that lifts up to show the sentiment behind it. Okay, my next example shows how you can change this die set so it only cuts a few of the tracks, and you can control where it goes and how much movement you can get from it. In this case, when the card is closed, you just see clouds and a little bit of sun. When you pull the tab, the sun comes out with a smile on it and a rainbow. So you can get really creative and use lots of different stamp sets and dies with this interactive die set. Let's get started with the background piece. This is 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Clouds for Days stencil. I'm masking off the clouds that are in the center of the stencil because I only want to use the border. I'm using a Pink and Main Ergonomic blending brush to pull blue ink from the stencil off onto the white cardstock to create a really soft border of clouds going across the background. This is Altenew Sea Breeze Ink, but you could use any light blue dye ink for this or even a pigment ink. So I completed the entire background by just moving the border around and adding more and more ink. It really takes no time at all to do. Now it's time to add the slits in the background to allow the movement up and down. I only want to create 3 tracks this time. Let me show you how I did that. I have the track die here that cuts 5 tracks, but I'm only going to use the 3 on the left. So I'm centering those 3. Pretend the 2 on the right aren't even there. Once I have the 3 centered as best as I can, it doesn't have to be perfect, I'm going to do partial die cutting again. So I'll take my other die cutting plate and I'll only cover up the 3 tracks and leave the other 2 on the right hanging out. So when I run this through, only the 3 tracks will cut. This will allow me to have 3 pieces slide up and down, which is just about the right size for a cloud, rainbow, and sun to move up and down. You could do 1 track, you could do 2, 3, 4, or 5. I'm just doing 3 here. I'm going to cut this again, but I'm rotating my die and moving it down. I'm lining up the track die with the tracks we already have cut. This is just going to make my tracks longer. I want to be able to pull the tab and have that entire rainbow and sun come out. So I need long tracks. So I'm just lining up the die with the tracks we've already cut, run it through again, partial die cutting the 3, and now we have longer tracks, 3 long tracks in the middle. This will work perfectly for pulling out an image behind the cloud. I've also die cut another of the slider pieces from Fog Cardstock. However, this is 5 wide. Remember, that's how the die is. So I'm going to cut it down so there's only 3 wide. We only need 3 sets of flaps. So I'm cutting the excess off, and now I'm going to cut the little tab off the top. We'll add a different tab later on that's on this center. So now we have the slider panel that can attach to our 3 tracks. So I'm wrapping the flaps around, and then I'll put the foam square on each as we go. If you don't want to use foam tape, you could also use purple tape to temporarily hold those flaps on the front, but I find it just as easy to add the foam squares now so that they're ready to go when you're ready to add your image that you want to go up and down. Okay, now we're putting the last flaps around, wrap it around the track, put the foam square on there, and there we have our 3 tracks ready. And remember, you could do 1 track, 2, 3, 4, it's up to you. Also, I made those tracks longer here, so I have more movement. That's a nice thing about this die set. You can really change it up easily. Now it's time to create the elements for the front of our card. For this, I used a new Simon Says stamp set called Under the Weather. I thought the clouds, the rainbow, and the sun were fun for this card. So I stamped a bunch of clouds, the rainbow and sun with the smiley face, and I cut them out, and I colored them with Copic markers. Now I have the sun and rainbow image, and I'm just attaching them to some clouds, just so I have a larger element to go up and down. I can remove the release paper from the foam squares, and now I'm adding my rainbow element onto that. So now when I pull the tab, my rainbow will go up and down. Next, I created a bunch of clouds that I glued together to be a large piece. You could use a large cloud piece that you cut with a border, but I just glued 4 together. And I'm going to see if it's big enough to hide my rainbow and part of my sun. And I just have it laying there, and I can test it out, and look at that. It'll hide it. So I'm going to hold it right there, and I'm going to lift up the corners and put foam square on the left and on the right. Now I will say, just like before, these clouds are glued together with just tape runner, something that I can move if I wanted to. I only used a little bit. Later I will go put strong liquid adhesive between the clouds to make sure they stay. But I want to have the flexibility in case I need to move anything as we go. I put the foam square under the cloud on the left, foam square over on the right, and now I'm going to test it out and check it out. When I pull the rainbow, it's revealed. When I push it down, you don't see it. Now, if I push too far down, you'll see the rainbow on the bottom left. So I just want to put a little stopper on the back. This is really handy. I know this is the closed position that I want, right there with just a little bit of the sun peeking out. So I just flip it over, and I put a piece of tape along the tracks so that the gray slider piece can't go any further. So I'm going to flip it over, put purple tape under there, and just kind of work my way underneath that so that there's a little stopper there. You could also put foam tape underneath the gray piece, but I find that this is easier to do for now while I still have to assemble the front. I want the back to lay flat for now. Now I'm going to test it again, and there you can see how the rainbow is hidden and then comes out. And I just think that's so much fun to do. As I was looking at this, I realized I didn't need that bottom cloud that I have glued there. That's just kind of floating on the front, because check this out. I can make it so that the cloud peeks out the bottom when it's closed, and then it moves up when you pull the tab. For a sentiment, I used the Simon Says Stamp Small Hello die and die cut it from black cardstock and glued it onto the cloud. Then for a little stamp sentiment on the cloud next to it, I used the Simon Says Stamp Follow the Rainbow stamp set. I thought the sentiment that said brighter days are coming would be great on this card. So I carefully removed the cloud on the left, stamped the sentiment, and then added it back in place. Remember, there's a foam square on the right side of that. Now I can go and add liquid adhesive between my clouds so that they all glue together nicely. That's why I like to just use a tiny bit of glue that will allow me to move and remove it if needed. Then I go back and use a stronger glue once I'm ready for everything to be set in place. Now it's time to deal with the slider mechanism. I need to make it longer, so I have another piece of Fog cardstock here. I'm going to use my thumbnail to make a mark at how thick it needs to be or how wide it needs to be, and I'll cut that down. Now I'm going to glue this piece onto the slider that's attached to our card so that it's stronger. This way it won't buckle when you move it up and down. It'll hold up nicely and it's longer. See how I can make it as long as I want here and it'll still move up and down nicely. I use a strong adhesive here because I don't want this to come undone. Okay, so there we have the open and the closed. Once I have it in its closed position, I'm going to go ahead and cut the excess off the top. So I have it in the closed position, just cut right along the top, and then we'll add our own little tab on this. Now you could create a tab using the die for the slider piece. You could use a die cut circle, whatever you want. I just cut a tab off of one of the slider die cuts, and I'm just gluing it right onto the back there. And there we have a little tab. The die set actually comes with this circle with the arrow, but I couldn't find it at this point, so I just went with my own. Now I have some additional clouds here that I stamped and cut out. This one I'm gluing towards the bottom corner, cutting the excess off, then using that excess piece up on the top right corner. So it looks like I stamped and cut out more clouds than I really did. Those are both from the same cloud. After I've glued a few different clouds here and there in the background, we can go ahead and add this onto a note card. Just make sure you don't glue anything in the way of the tracks. So I'm putting foam tape below that, so right up against the slider, and then right up against the sides of the slider. Just make sure that that slider is in a straight centered position so that it'll move up and down freely. Now I can remove the release paper from this and add it onto a note card. This is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I can remove that purple tape that was just temporarily holding that in place. And now we can see how the tab pulls the rainbow out of the clouds and then tucks it back in. So I added a couple more clouds and a few little pool colored gemstones from Lucy's cards. You just can glue it anywhere you want as long as it's not in the way of your slider mechanism. So this example shows that you can customize this die set to have less elements that move up and down. Here I did 3 sliders, and you can make the tracks longer so you have more movement on your card. Totally up to you. You can get really creative with the products you have along with this die set. One thing I did want to mention is that with that little tab sticking off the top, it is bigger than 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So you'll need a bigger envelope. If you want it to fit into a regular envelope, just make your card a 1/4 inch shorter. So when that little tab sticks off the top, it'll still fit in your envelope. It's totally up to you. Okay, I hope this inspired you to try a surprise slider card with multiple elements moving. If you are interested in these products, I do have them linked below. In the middle are a couple other slider videos that I've done that you might be interested in. Thank you so much for visiting today and spending this time with me. I hope you're all staying healthy and safe, and we'll see you again for another video very soon.